Hi, my name is Ethan Foster, and I am an instructor at Bentley's Drum Shop in Fresno, California. This lesson is going to be the part 2 of my mini-series on ostinato variations for the funky primer. And this is specifically going to look at the left foot using the hi-hat as a timekeeping device with the groove and against the right-hand ostinato of your choosing as well. So if you want to look at the back of the book on the funky primer like we did last lesson, the book actually does give you a lot of ideas on how the hi-hat can be used as a timekeeping device. We're going to be looking at a few of my favorite ways of having the hi-hat keep time while you play, and it usually manifests in one of about 5 different ostinatos for the left foot to be using. The first one that we're going to start with is simply quarter notes. So choose your favorite beat from 3A, and we're going to use the hi-hat as a timekeeper. And at first, let's not use the right hand at all either. We're just going to focus on the left foot being the one that's keeping time here. I'm going to use beat number 4 in the funky primer, section 3A, because that one has an 8th note on the bass drum that will be contrary to what the left foot is doing there. So this is what beat number 4 in section 3A sounds like with a quarter note on the hi-hat using the left foot. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. After you can do any of these left foot ostinatos with just the left foot keeping time for you and without the presence of the right hand, add the right hand back in, usually starting with 8th notes. You can use any of the ostinatos in the last video as well to further complicate and create a little bit more intrigue. For now, I'm going to be just using 8th notes in the right hand so we can focus on the new stuff that the left foot is going to be bringing to the sound of the groove as a whole. So here's number 4 again. Sounds just like that. So quarter notes is the first one that I will normally turn students onto. The second one that I like to do is 8th notes on the hi-hat. And so this is going to be a little bit more busy, but it's going to be following in the exact rhythmic pattern that the right hand is doing on the ride cymbal. Let's try the left foot on its own for now first, and then we'll add the right hand in when we're comfortable with the way that our left foot is moving. The left foot is probably the weakest limb out of any limb that we have as drummers, so it might feel a little weird at first, but if you practice it, it'll develop its own skill just like any other limb did at first. So here's 8th notes on the hi-hat. Again, this is beat number 4 in section 3A. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and notice how much of a thicker sound that has. It's a very dense way of playing, and having a lot of that kind of high frequency content in the groove is to be used when you need a lot of note density in the groove. It's a very stacked sound, I guess. It's a thicker texture to be using, a faster subdivision with the left foot to supplement what your right hand is doing anywhere on the kit. Notice how they compare. I'm going to be playing the quarter notes and then into the 8th notes during the same beat. Here's that. 1 and 2 and ready and play and... Notice I started playing some quarter notes in the right hand as well. It can be really useful if you have something that you want to sustain out for a little bit longer, maybe during a heavier section of a rock song. If you're playing quarter notes on a crash or a ride cymbal somewhere, but you still want to define that eighth note subdivision, the left foot is a great place to be able to do that while still having that ringing out, awesome, washy type of crash sound in a different place. So next ostinato we're going to be throwing onto the left foot as a variation here is going to be the and counts. So this is just a single eighth note on the and. So eighth note, eighth rest, you get the picture. We're counting the and. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This one adds a little bit more emphasis to the upbeats, and it makes the groove overall, I think, feel a little bit more like it's on its toes, if you see what I mean there. Here's how it sounds. 1 and 2 and ready and play and 1 and cool. It's important as you're working through these that you focus on trying to make the left foot line up exactly with the right foot, the snare drum, and the right hand. It's not an easy thing to do because, again, the left foot is probably the weakest of the 4 limbs that we have. In order for the groove to stay centered and to be solid, try your very best to get that left foot to agree with the other 3 parts that are sounding in the beat. So the very next set of ostinatos that we're going to be working with, we already have quarter notes, we have eighth notes, and we have the and counts of the eighth notes. Our left foot is pretty limited in what it can do in quick succession. I'm not comfortable personally doing very fast notes on the left foot, and usually you don't see that a whole lot. But one of the cool things that you can do is you can start placing a single note on any of the 16th notes. So we could do it on the ones, which is a quarter note. The E's, haven't done that yet. The ands we've already done, and the uhs is another really cool thing to do. So if we put the left foot on the E, that's what this sounds like. Here we go. 1 and 2 E and a ready and a play E and a 1 E and a. This is much less common. Again, usually the left foot, it becomes a timekeeping role due to the weakness of our left foot. However, this particular placement is really cool when you pair it with the 1 and on the right hand. What it ends up doing is it fills in the E, so we have a continuous string of 16th notes that play together, and that would sound like this: 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. That's really cool when you get it going really fast, because again, I mentioned this in the last video, it's not really comfortable for any particular hand or foot to be playing really fast, consistent notes in any particular place. But if you get good at lining these two things up, you can fill that 16th note subdivision really, really well. That's what this would sound like on number 4. The same can be true of the other way around with putting this on the So let's work through that. We're going to do the same beat with the single note placement of the hi-hat. So 1 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and. With 8th notes on the right hand. And now with the 1E and on the right hand. So again, this is going to be one of those instances where we can get the left foot to fill in the right hand's rhythm, and then we have a continuous 16th note texture in the high voices on the kit. Not an easy thing to do. And again, remember, try and make sure that to your very best ability, this is lining up and fitting into the groove with everything else. It's gonna be like you're holding on for dear life at the beginning, but when you can get the left foot to engage in the entire texture of the drum set in these grooves, you're not only practicing having the left foot keep time, you're practicing four-way coordination, you're practicing limb independence, and most importantly, you're practicing your ability to subdivide and put any note on any limb in any position in the measure. So that's a really important skill to be able to have. Counting is everything, and forcing your left foot to count is a difficult but very, very worthwhile thing to do. I'm going to play through a couple different possible ostinato variations on the left foot while my right hand plays the 1 and a ostinato rhythm on the right cymbal. So this is what that's going to sound like. I didn't mention this as the first one. I should have, because this is probably the easiest one there is, and it does show up very, very frequently, especially in jazz music. But that would be to put a hi-hat chick with the snare drum on beats 2 and 4 to supplement the backbeat. There's something magical that happens when you put the hi-hat with the snare drum. It gives it a little bit more of that sizzly type of sparkle, if that makes any sense. It helps reinforce the high-end presence of the snare drum in the backbeat. So if you're a jazz drummer, you are already probably very comfortable doing this. But even in rock, even in funk, in many other genres, this is a great way to reinforce the 2 and 4 counts and just add a little bit more to the snare drum on the backbeat, so it isn't having to work so hard. It's a great way to help the snare drum cut through the rest of the band's texture, especially if there's a bunch of guitars that are playing at the same time. They still usually can't compete with the way that a hi-hat chick with the foot cuts through the whole band. Here's the hi-hat on beats 2 and 4 with the snare drum, and I'm going to phase it in and out of being played with the snare drum so you can hear the difference. Great. So those are a few of the most common placements for the hi-hat to end up with its own variations for being an ostinato. I'm going to play through a bunch of them while I keep a consistent 1 and a on the right hand, so you can hear how all of these left foot ostinatos interact with what the right hand is doing and supplement the beat as a whole. Here's what that sounds like. All right, so there's a group of really fun left foot ostinato variations that you can use to supplement any beat in the funky primer. I don't think you should have to wait until you get to the very last couple of pages to start incorporating the left foot as a timekeeping tool and as a way of increasing the density of the texture that we're using here on the drum set. So hopefully you found a lot of these useful. Hopefully there's a lot for you to practice with it. And just so you know, this is not an exhaustive list of things that the left foot can do. We didn't talk about using an open splash sound like this. There are so many uses that the hi-hat has. It's such a dynamic piece of a drum set. Arguably the most dynamic, one of the most important aspects of this entire instrument is found in what the hi-hat can do. So again, this is not by any means an exhaustive list, and if you wanted to do other stuff with it, please be my guest, but this is just a fun couple of ways that you can start incorporating the hi-hat into grooves and to make things a little bit spicier. So I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and stay tuned for other lessons from a lot of the other Bentley's instructors in this series, and subscribe if you haven't already, and keep on practicing. Thanks.